Hello, welcome to another Introverted Indies interview. I'm Lucy A. McLaren, the co-host of Introverted Indies, and along with my fellow host Lydia Baker, we interview indie authors with a view to getting the word out about their books because we fully appreciate, as both indie authors and introverts, how difficult it is to get the word out about your book releases. So today we're joined by Michele Mekel and Cindy Ellen Hill, who I'll pass over to shortly to introduce yourself. But Lydia, if you want to do a little brief intro of yourself there.
Yeah, my name is Lydia Baker. I'm a sci-fi writer and dystopian writer, and I'm also working on a crime series at the moment and trying a sci-fi comedy, which may or may not be funny. Lucy and I have known each other for quite a while. We met through publishing, so that's sort of our story of small press publishers and our experience with those. Michele, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your book?
Hi everyone, I'm Michele Mekel, and thank you ladies for hosting us. It's an honor to be here. I am a poet, and I am the author of Loverless Beds and Other Pleasures, which is a full-length poetry compilation.
Fabulous. Cindy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, and thanks very much for having us on. I think you hit the nail on the head with the difficulties of introverted authors trying to spread the word about their books. My name's Cindy Ellen Hill. I live in Vermont in the United States, and I am the author of Leeds Point, which is a historic Gothic horror novel in sonnet verse.
Awesome. So they sound great. We're here with you together because you're both being published by Selkie Song Press. So can you tell us a little bit about how you both found them as a publisher? Did you submit to them? Do you want to start, Cindy?
Sure. And that's an interesting question because I'm not quite remembering. I think they did have a call for submissions. Selkie Songs Publishing is out of London, and they had a call for submissions. I think they were in the process of publishing their initial book, which is an anthology, which really sets the stage for the tone of their publishing house, which is a very inclusive, queer-friendly, and also focusing on eco-political and mythological, magical works. There's very much a sort of like Green Man or, goddess sort of vibe going to their publications. And it seemed a good fit for many of the elements in my novel, and I sent it off. Of course, when you're sending off novels to agents and, thousands of submissions and agenting houses, it's difficult. I love indie presses, though. I love small indie presses and feel like they're a great source to work from. So I had sent it off to them and got a wonderful reply back that started our dialogue, and here we are with the book coming out along with Michelle's.
That's fantastic. And Michele, how about you? What was your process like for signing with them?
So it was a very similar process to Cindy's. I really loved what they stand for, and I think that an indie press is definitely the way to go in terms of care and feeding of authors. It feels really intimate, and I sent it to them when I saw the call. In fact, it was the first submission that I had made for the book, and quickly got a positive response and really adored Ezra, who is the lead and the editor in the endeavor, and just thought this will be a great working experience. So I'm in.
Mm-hmm. That's great to have it be your first. So can you tell us a little bit more about your book then, Michele? You mentioned it's called excuse me, called Loverless Beds, and it's a poetry collection. What was the inspiration behind the book?
So it's a compilation of poems that have been written over about a decade that fit together. It deals with autopathography, basically the experience of illness, the experience of healing and treatment, also the experience of being human, as well as the detritus of daily living and the magical moments that occur in the interim.
That sounds really wonderful and probably like something that a lot of people can connect with as well. Was it the process of writing it quite a personal thing for you?
Yes, most of my poetry is, and the poetry just happens. I just figured, okay, if I'm having these experiences, someone else must be as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Cindy, what about you for your book? Leeds Point, wasn't it?
Yes. It's interesting. It's a novel. It's a very almost experimental fiction style novel. It occurs in 1702, but there's also a vaudeville act and a television interview. It's very experimental, but there is a lot of myself in it, I think. There is a lot of family history, a lot of emotion that was in it, and it sort of started out being one thing and wound up being something quite different. I think there's a lot of different layers to it. I meant to write this eco-political book, but you can also see that there is a lot of women's lived experience, women responding to violence and to ecological destruction, our relationship with the earth. There are many things that I was wrestling with, family dynamics, that I think that have worked their way into this, obviously a highly fictionalized fashion, but there's so much of myself in this.
I think that's one of those things that we can't really avoid as authors, like having our personal experiences and views and feelings somehow find their way into what we're writing, no matter what it is, whether it be fantastical or more real life centered. It's still part of us, in it. Do you feel like it's an important process for you in terms of writing, including those kinds of personal elements?
I think it's what makes writing writing. And you said those are the human elements of it. And, right now, what's happening in the writing industry where we're facing AI, which may fabricate the words, but it doesn't have a lived experience, or what it has stolen from all of us as lived experience to put, into the words. It's a very different thing. So what I love about literature is the words on the page, of course, but also the fact that it's a product of someone's combination of their lived experience and imagination.
I think it makes it very relatable, and you can really connect with an author through their volume of work, and feel like you know someone even if you've never met them across the page.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always the aim as an author, isn't it? You want.
Yeah, so we've obviously talked about what inspired you and what made you write. So I know you both write in sort of a poetry and a verse type form. Do you write in any other forms?
Go ahead, Michelle. I know you're working on a really interesting academic book right now.
Yes, so I'm a professor by day, and so I write a lot of academic articles. I'm working on, as Cindy said, an academic book that deals with the misapplication of the notion of intelligence to the search for extraterrestrials, for example, and all the baggage that comes with our concept of intelligence. Poetry is my self-expression, and then for work, I do a lot of this more intellectual lifting.
Yeah, and I've written probably in just about every genre you can imagine. I had a long history in journalism, and the only thing I don't write much of is essays. I never quite got the essay. I love to read a good essay, but it just doesn't come out that way. It winds up leading somewhere else. I've done a lot of journalism. I write a lot in my day job, and then I write a lot of poetry and fiction. And I think, yeah, poetry has always been that more personal expression, more where my heart is, where I live. But fiction, long and short fiction. And I did truly love journalism for a stint, in terms of what you may be able to do in terms of impact with some stories. And I had some impact locally on a number of issues, and that was very rewarding as well.
And for you both, with that, then the professional kinds of writing that you've done, academic or journalistic, do you feel like having that experience helped when it came to writing your books?
I guess for me, not so much because it's such a different kind of writing. I can look at it through an academic lens of autopathography and the health humanities, but in terms of the writing itself, they're so different. Cindy, what's your experience, especially with the journalism background?
So, two things. One is with my background in journalism, which has always been sort of a secondary sideline for me, a career. But I started in journalism when I was 15, working for a twice weekly paper. And my editor, who we called Bluebeard, was ruthless and just slashed, and at the time, journalism had a very formulaic pattern. It's very different from today where you put those like headlines where, it's clickbait. You don't want to tell people what's going on. There was like, you had to tell people the whole story in the first line and then fill in details as you went down. And he would just slash up from the bottom depending on how much space there was. He would yell at everybody all the time, just very loud, blustering, like trope of an old style newsroom. And I think, horrible as that was at the time, it was really good for me for my writing because I quickly lost a lot of the sort of personal, emotional attachment to the words on the page. And I know often, particularly with young writers, but even with older writers, if I start to try to edit, this is the killing your darlings, everybody, that this chapter's just going nowhere. It's so painful. And to me, it's like they're words on the page, and my goal is for the writing to be the best that it can be. And if an editor says this isn't working, I'm like, yeah, you're right, good, we'll take that out. And I don't break down into a sobbing mass. I got all of that out of me, back when I was 15 in the newsroom. But my day job involves a lot of very technical writing, and it's something where every word has to be really accurate and low context. And I think that actually helped a lot with the poetry because every word in a poem has to kind of earn its real estate, earn its spot, has to be advancing the poem. So I think that although they're very, very different writing styles, that concept of making the words count as little crystals and little gems that you're deliberately planting, I think was a helpful lesson to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of in at the deep end, but you took a lot from it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good skill to have. I think a lot of people do, like you say, struggle to cut bits out and to be ruthless. And I think word count is definitely something that is on publishers' lists, isn't it, at the moment? How much you're allowed to write or what fits into what category.
I think there's perhaps more flexibility of the word count in small presses than bigger ones, but even so, you still want it to be as impactful as possible, and that does often require cutting rather than adding.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was just going to ask if you had any other projects. Obviously, you've got the ones coming out with Selkie Song, but do you have any other projects on the go at the moment or in the wings?
I always have many things in the wings. I do have a poetry collection that I've been trying to find a home for that I haven't quite yet. And then I have 3 longer books that I've been working on, 2 of which involve some research. Well, all of them really do. They tend to involve a lot of research. I get intrigued by some rabbit hole of a research project and start making all my notes for books. And one of them is a local history issue. Another is not a novel, but a bit of research I'm doing on some early Italian sonnets that are working their way towards academic articles or books. And then the thing that's shaping up to be my next novel in verse will be something on Vercingetorix. So that's also involving a bit of research and lots of reading in French.
I've got the academic book that is coming to fruition and coming to a close, and then the poetry is always an ongoing process for me. So soon I will have a clear desk and can decide what I want to work on next.
Well, that's a nice feeling, isn't it? It's quite exciting. I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned, Cindy, about Leeds Point, but it sounds like it kind of comes into all of your books in terms of, you said it's kind of a split. So how much time do you spend in terms of the research side of things? What is that process like for you in your books?
So Leeds Point, actually, it occurs in 1702. There's just a few of these sort of experimental atemporal scenes that happen, but they're all within that 1702 timeline. And what happened was I had started writing it, must be about 4 years ago now. I started writing it. I got to X point, which wasn't terribly far into it, and I realized that it's in the United States, or before the United States existed in 1702. And I realized I was writing about a town And it suddenly dawned on me that I wasn't sure it had been established yet in 1702. And I realized, oh, I have to do some more research before I go any further with this story. And I was involved in research with very little writing on it, but constantly researching, and then writing all these research notes and writing all these character studies with timelines for about 2 years or more, 2 or 3 years. And then as I was doing my research notes, I call it like chunking in, dropping those sections from my research into the sections of the novel outline as to where they were going to go. And then once it came all together, the actual writing of it was pretty darn fast. But by that point, I had been ruminating on it and researching it, having it going around in my head as to how these threads were going to fit together for several years, probably for about 3 years. And then it just kind of all came out and it flowed very nicely. Because at that point, it was all in my head. Like I had it all and it was all outlined. So all the pieces were there. There was just the mechanical part of writing it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's it. That's all part of the problem, that kind of rumination and taking a step back and just letting your brain do its work. And I find that fascinating when something will just pop into your head, often at the most inopportune moment for me, like driving or in the middle of the night. But your brain is doing so much work in the background and it's still writing and pulling all those threads together for you. It's just not a conscious thing. I find that really interesting.
Yeah, I think Michele and I were just talking about that, weren't we?
Absolutely. It's like the muse at play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And Michele, you said with Loverless Beds, it's a work of many years of poetry coming together. And you said your poetry is an ongoing process. How do you know when it's a collection, like when it's done then? Like, how did you know Loverless Beds was a collection that was ready for submitting out?
I just had all of these poems on similar threads, and they seemed to work together and build an arc. And so I thought, okay, well, this grouping of poems is ready for setting aside into a collection, as you say, and then the others will find their way into another collection or into individual publication or something like that, as they do over time. But this grouping just seemed to talk to each other.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I suppose that's the music work as well, isn't it? Like part of your brain knew there was an arc at play and it was writing poems around that. Yeah, really interesting. So for both of you then, have you always wanted to write? Is this kind of a lifelong passion that you've pursued?
I don't know so much that I always wanted to write as just that I've always written. And I think one thing is, it's often said that whether or not you should be a writer is a question of, can you actually conceive of not writing? And I can't conceive of not writing or not playing music. Like those things are sort of like breathing. They just happen. They're going to happen whether I'm planning to do it or not, right? Things are going to pop in my head. I'm grabbing that notebook in the middle of the night or dictating into my phone while I'm driving, and writing just, it's there. It just has to happen. Mm-hmm. How about you, Michele?
I think I'm a very word person like Cindy is, and so it's my way of processing, and so it's going on. It's for me a healthy way to work through things, and so it's happening anyway, and since it's happening anyway, I might as well do something with it, is my thought process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask Michele about your poetry, and I know as writing novels, and like Lucy said, we sort of plan, and obviously like Cindy, you said it had like a plan and an outline and research. Are yours more a sort of spontaneous thing, or do you think, okay, this is a topic that I want to write about, and then you go from there?
So mainly it's spontaneous. Mainly it's like what Lucy was talking about, where it hits you while you're in the shower, and it's happening whether or not you want it to at that moment. There it is. So you jot it down. Occasionally I will use a prompt to work on a poem, but mainly it is a very auto-centric process where it does itself.
Mm-hmm.
If I could follow up on that, I've read Michelle's book and it is just phenomenal. And I read a lot of poetry, and her collection is so cohesive and that the voice is so strong and so distinctive. So it's not like a bunch of poems that have been shoved into a folder. There really is an emotional arc to it. It's less a narrative arc, I think, than an emotional arc, and things keep weaving their way back in, and feelings keep weaving their way back in. And when you finish it, you really have more of the feeling as when you've finished a novel, and you want to just sit there and hold it, for a moment. So it is really just a wonderful and wonderfully well organized collection. And the voice in it is so strong, and it really is just magical. I love it.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much. And I have to say, I had the pleasure of reading Cindy's book, and I was daunted at first because here were a 300 plus page book of sonnets. And then I started reading. And then the next thing you know, I could not put the book down. I kept going and going and going, and it was so fast. And I was so engaged by the characters, and like literally crying when certain things happened in the book, and aghast when other things happened in the book. Like, you feel for the characters. And believe it or not, the sonnets make you stay engaged, make the pacing go so fast. And when you put it down at that last page, you literally are like, whoa, wow, what did I just read? Like, this was amazing. And you couldn't have convinced me of that when I first started with all of these sonnets. And kudos, because wow.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, when you say a book in sonnet verse, there's 477 sonnets and a couple of pantoums in it. And that does generate a certain visage of people who hear it as like, oh, 477 sonnets, right? Like, just read the first couple and see if it works, because it's not quite what it sounds like. Maybe I shouldn't tell people it's in sonnets.
Surprise sonnets.
Because that's quite unusual. It's not a sort of format that I'd heard of before. So when I read a little bit about it, that was quite interesting. I thought, oh, that's something different. But that for me would pique my interest.
Yeah. So verse novels are kind of having a moment, particularly in young adult fiction, but they're mostly free verse. Though I have been seeing more sonnet series on a particular subject that form a story arc. I think some people do a novel in verse where they're individual poems, but together they form a narrative, and others, like mine, is more written like a novel where it's more in a flow. So it's like Eugene Onegin or Vikram Seth's Golden Gates, where it's actually more on the novel side than on they aren't separate standalone poems. It's the form that the prose takes. But novels for adults in verse are far less common, and then in sonnet verse, they're few and far between.
Yeah, because I've not heard of that either. Yeah, it does sound absolutely fascinating. It sounds like for both of you, it was a very powerful experience reading each other's works. So that certainly piques my interest as well. I'm all about the strong, emotional and character stories. For both of you, again, what do you do when you're not writing? Obviously, you've both touched upon kind of some stuff outside your work, your day job, so to speak. But what do you do outside of those things?
Cindy has a fabulous interest span that is incredible to me, so go for it.
So my day job is I'm an environmental advocacy attorney for public interest groups, engaged in litigation. So that's the thing about writing in my day job. A week that I don't write 50 or 60,000 words in my day job is a pretty dull week. So it's a very word intensive job. And I do some editing work. I'm a passionate gardener and a musician in an Irish folk band here in Vermont. Though we've toured in the UK actually. And so that and my garden and being outside, hiking. I live in the mountains in a very rural area. So we're out in the woods a lot.
Yeah, lovely.
And
Michelle?
Cat lady. I love spending time with my cats and a book and crafts and a cup of coffee. If it's pool season, I'll be doing that in the sun. But very pedestrian, I guess.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, I have a cat. Love cats.
Got a cat. I've been waiting for my cat to jump up here. She keeps sort of wandering around and looking, so she may make an appearance.
They usually do. As soon as the computer's out, he's like, "Oh,
Right.
what's this?" I'm just going to go right in front of the screen. Always the way. So, do you have any writing advice or any sort of tips you might want to give to people who want to try writing poetry or sonnets or just want to get into writing?
So I think just do it. I think we get in our own way far too much, and you can always revise, but this applies to both the academic style writing and the poetry or any other kind of writing. If you don't have a quote unquote crappy first draft, you don't have anything to start with. So my advice is pick up the pencil and just start going.
Absolutely, just write. Well, two things: write and read,
Yeah.
and read a lot. And you know what? Push your comfort zone on reading. Read things out of genres that you would normally read. Read things that were published before 1800. If you can read in another language, that's marvelous. Or read translations of fiction and poetry from other languages. I think the more broadly you have read, the more imagination and style can come into your own writing. And I'll give you one example. So I went back for my 60th birthday. I gave myself my MFA in fiction and poetry. And I got introduced to a lot of reading. I read voraciously, but I got introduced to a lot of things I would not have otherwise read. And one of the books that I read was Charles Yu's Interior Chinatown, which I understand it's been made into a television show or movie, but it was extraordinary experimental fiction, blending the world of being in a script versus being in your real life and sort of not being able to distinguish between when you're on set. And the author was wrestling with stereotypes of Asian Americans in both film and then in real life. But blending working as an extra in a film with when you're in real life to the point where you can't tell when the narrator is in which position. And it was the kind of thing where, yeah, when I put it down, I was like, wow, what did I just read? Like, I didn't know you could do this in a novel because I just didn't, that wasn't in the realm of English pastoral novels that I had been reading in the past. It was totally different. I'm not sure when I first read it that I could say I liked it, but it stuck in my head and it interested me because it was so different. So read things that maybe you're not even attracted to. Read those classics that everybody says you should read just to see what it's all about, and then look for these more experimental and independent, so much of the wonderful stuff coming out of independent publishers. And then just keep writing, write whatever comes in your head, and don't worry about forcing it into a box, of what is this going to be until later, because it'll come to you. It'll fall into place at some point.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Don't we always say that? Just embrace the crap of the first draft.
Yep.
Just get it out on that page. And yeah, I think you're right, with reading, it's so important. And you never know what you're going to be influenced by, what's going to spark off an idea for you or bring a new idea into something you're already writing. It's really important to read widely and often.
Definitely.
So we'll do the quick fire round next. Favorite book?
So for me, it's more of a favorite author, Jeff Noon, who is actually a British author who writes at the nexus of fantasy and science fiction. I am just addicted to his work. It's very visual.
So my brain immediately goes to the Divine Comedy because it just has to. That's where literature starts for me. But again, also not a book, but an author, but anything by Ursula Le Guin. Who I just idolized.
Fab. And what about a favorite film?
So for me, it is probably Cloud Atlas because it weaves these stories together across an arc, across lifetimes, across timelines, and it's just beautifully done.
Princess Bride, hands down. Watch it every year on my birthday. Know every line.
Favorite game?
Uno. Absolutely
Can't go wrong
Uno.
with
And
that.
my 3-year-old granddaughter beats me at it all the time. But it's so fabulous. It's so much fun.
My husband and I play Words with Friends on the phone at dinner time every night, so that must be it.
Excellent. And a favourite writing beverage? Is there something that's always with you when you sit down to write?
If I could mainline Diet Coke, I would probably do so.
Tea, definitely. It used to be coffee. I was a coffee addict all my life, but I reached a certain age and coffee started keeping me awake through the night. So I have switched to my Earl Grey. I would have to say Earl Grey with honey or maple syrup, which is our local sweetener here in Vermont.
Hmm. And before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you both about the upcoming event that you have with Selkie Songs, right? You're coming to London. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. We're coming to London July 11th to July 17th, 2026 for the launch of our 2 books. We're going to be there together. We are so excited. There is a launch party that everyone is invited to, which is at the Park Hotel in Teddington on Monday, July 13th. And then we are speaking at the London Arts-Based Research Centre's Eco-Poetics Conference during the day on Thursday the 16th, and on the evening of Thursday, July 16th, 2026, we're doing a reading and signing at Word on the Water, which is the book barge, the London book barge. And we are in the process of booking in some other readings and signings as well.
That'll be a lot of fun. It sounds amazing.
Michelle, what else are we going to do in London?
We're going to read in public places and we're going to do all sorts of social media things and have fun. That's the best part.
Probably ride the eye. All the times I've been in London, I've never gotten on the eye, so I think that's on the list. And maybe buy a hat at Lock and Company, because that's also on my list.
Sounds like a good plan. So to wrap up then, can you tell us where we can stay in touch with you both, keep up to date with your current release, any future releases that you might have?
I'm going to have, it's about to be finished, a website which is michelemekel.com, and Cindy has a website.
Right. So mine is at cindyellenhill.com, and you can also find both of us at Selkie Songs Publishing, which is selkiesongpress.com. And both Selkie Songs Press and both of us. And here's the kitty. Selkie Songs Press and Michele Mekel and I are on Facebook and Insta as well, and you can find us there.
Excellent. And what is the release date for the books?
June 20th. We expect it to be out through Ingram.
And then, so June 20th, it should be in Ingram. But again, our launch party, allowing for any contingencies, will be on July 13th.
Excellent. Fabulous. Well, thank you very much for coming to speak to us. It's been wonderful to hear about your books.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh,
Yeah,
of course.
thanks so much. Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and we will see you next time on Introverted Indies.
Thank you.